Welcome back for another profile coming to you from the Aryan Brotherhood archives. Today we will be discussing Robert Lee Griffin, a longtime member and California State Commissioner of the brand. In the criminal underworld, he was better known as Blinky, because it was said he commanded so much power and fear over the convict population, he could order a murder by simply blinking his eyes. This may not be 100% true, but he did wield a great amount of clout, and he inspired fear in those that knew him. Please join us as we recount his historical rise to power, made possible by the trail of violence and death he left in his wake. But before we begin, here's a quick word from our sponsor, found in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16 and verse 18. Pride leads to destruction, and arrogance to downfall. Many of us do not stop and think about this when we wallow in our depravity. Moving on. Blinky was born on June 16, 1948, in Los Angeles, California, to parents Alma Ray Griffin, better known as E.R. Tugg, and Donna Griffin. His journey to the wild side began early in life. Blinky started taking barbiturates and smoking marijuana at 12 years old, and first shot heroin at 14. This is a picture of a very young 14-year-old Blinky from the 1963 Dale Junior High School yearbook. You can almost see his anger festering inside. The next picture is from the Magnolia High School 1964 yearbook. Every young person navigating through a criminal life rarely stops to reflect on how cool it was to be an innocent, well-adjusted young kid who was loved by someone. How did the young man you see pictured here evolve into an almost unrecognizable example of a human being and a career criminal? Like many of the men that entered the life of a career criminal, a prison gang member, Blinky was state-raised. His journey in the juvenile justice system began in the 11th grade when Blinky assaulted his teacher, resulting in his commitment to the Joplin Boys Ranch in Orange County. His behavior only escalated as he took in the criminal schooling offered by detained peers. In 1966, he graduated from high school at the Dual Vocational Institution in Tracy, California, which held the most incorrigible wards of the state in the California Youth Authority. Somehow he passed. However, earning his high school degree earned him enough good credit to be paroled. Talk about memories. I was housed at DVI with Blinky and also received my high school diploma at this gladiator school, as the inmates affectionately called it, sometime in 1967. In fact, I remember being inside the K-Wing segregation unit with one dim light directly outside my cell, the only illumination that allowed me to complete my final exam. Once Blinky was back out on the streets, he was chasing the dragon, i.e. feeding his heroin habit, by carrying out armed robberies. On July 10, 1967, 19-year-old Blinky Griffin and his crime partner were arrested for robbing two sailors on the Harbor Boulevard on-ramp to Interstate 5, also known as the Santa Ana Freeway. His probation officer gave him the option of jail or becoming a United States Marine. Blinky made it through boot camp, but was kicked out for being AWOL twice while on drug binges. However, it wasn't until 1970 that he was committed to the California Department of Corrections. Blinky was convicted of an armed robbery committed on July 27, 1969. $1,249 taken from Bo John's liquor store, and the August 20th, 127 robbery of a stop-and-go market, both in Garden Grove. On May 6, 1970, Blinky Griffin was sentenced to serve a term of 6 months to life in state prison by Superior Court Judge William Murray in Orange County Superior Court. At this point in his criminal career, Blinky wasn't half-stepping. He eagerly embraced the violence and madness that lurked inside the concrete jungles of the CDC. In 1971, court records already documented his AB and shamrock tattoos on his stomach. Even before the Aryan Brotherhood's 1967 prison formation in San Quentin, many of its members had long established relationships with the Mexican Mafia. These relationships went back to their days as state-raised youngsters putting in work inside the California Youth Authority's Gladiator School. For example, AB member William Puppet McKinney was housed at DVI with some of the MOGs. In 1961, he was locked up in the DVI Adjustment Center with MA co-founders Eddie Paternos Luera and Liro Pedrosa. Puppet would actively participate alongside Potato Nose and Liro during a riot on April 15, 1961, scaling the fence that separated the Adjustment Center yard from the general population yard and attacked some guards. This led to Puppet's criminal prosecution and his transfer out of DVI. Blinky likewise forged ties with members of La M and did some dirt. On June 28, 1972, 23-year-old John Taylor from Anaheim was serving a sentence for armed robbery and was found dead at 4:15 p.m. inside the restroom of a dormitory of the Sierra Conservation Center. A guard on routine patrol found him suffering from 9 stab wounds to the chest and 1 to the thigh. Taylor arrived at the Sierra Conservation Center that same day at 12:30 p.m. from Soledad Prison, was processed and assigned to a dormitory, and then left the processing area at 2 p.m. No one was ever convicted of this murder, but the prison grapevine attributed this murder to Blinky and Mexican Mafia member Nico Velasquez. During this time in the California Department of Corrections, there was a never-ending cycle of race wars. On October 24, 1974, Aryan Brotherhood member Billy Buzzard Harris was stabbed twice in the neck at 5:55 p.m. on the tier outside his cell in San Quentin's D section. One man attacked Harris while 4 others staged a fight to distract the gunrail officer. Officers found a 14-inch sharpened file on the tier. All 5 suspects were black and either members or associates of the Black Guerrilla family. Buzzard was a high-priority target for the BGF because he was one of the participants in the racial confrontation at Soledad's O-Wing on January 13, 1970, that led to the deaths of 3 black convicts when Officer Opie Miller shot them to break up the battle. One of the black convicts shot was W.L. Nolan, credited with the founding of the Black Guerrilla family alongside George Jackson. A fellow Aryan Brotherhood member by the name of John Calfee witnessed the assault on Buzzard, but instead of coming to his aid, he went back into his cell not wanting any part of the altercation. When this news reached the ears of Blinky, he placed Calfee in the hat, not only because he showed fear and failed to assist a brother, but Blinky had sponsored Calfee into the Aryan Brotherhood. On December 26, 1974, Calfee became the 88th prisoner to be stabbed at San Quentin that year. He was stabbed at 1:25 p.m. during the exercise period in the North Cell Block segregated housing unit. Calfee was brutally beaten, strangled, stabbed in the back, and had a pencil driven into his eye, which penetrated his brain. He was reported to be in critical condition at Marin's General Hospital. Calfee would be in a coma for 3 weeks, and when he regained consciousness, he couldn't remember the assault, but he told prison officials that it could not have happened without Blinky's approval. Calfee lost an eye and part of a lung due to the attack. Blinky and fellow AB member Ronald Scalp Hunter Kruger were indicted and put on trial for the assault. Here is another picture of Blinky and Ronnie Kruger on the San Quentin lower yard taken in 1975. Also pictured are Mexican Mafia members George Pollo Felix, Albert Beto Valles, Daniel Black Dan Barella, William Willie Bobo Govea, and Vincent Tripas Inigo. Now let's return to the attack on Calfee. The prison investigators, not fully believing that Calfee would testify against the brand, asked him if he was going to lie to protect his brothers. He replied, "If a man stabbed you in the back, knocked all of your eye out, and kicked all the taste buds out of your mouth, you going to stand and lie for him?" In a pre-trial hearing, Blinky was asked if he had ever heard of the Aryan Brotherhood and if he was a member of the prison gang. He responded that he had heard of it, but he didn't believe it existed, except maybe on paper or in the minds of the prison administration. Apparently, the jury didn't believe Blinky because he and Ronnie Kruger were convicted of the vicious assault and sentenced to life. This did not deter nor slow down Blinky Griffin. He continued to sponsor and perpetuate murder and mayhem wherever he was housed. On October 13, 1980, Aryan Brotherhood member Stephen T-Bone Gibson was murdered on the Chino Palm Hall ABMA yard. T-Bone was killed because he was making derogatory comments about the Mexican Mafia, but it was not the MA that killed him. It was his own brothers that punched his ticket. T-Bone and Blinky and other members of the Aryan Brotherhood were housed in a unit that shared an exercise yard with the Mexican Mafia. According to the prosecution, MA leaders approached the brand members about the disrespectful comments made by T-Bone and demanded satisfaction. Some of the MA mobsters present at the time included Joe Morgan, Benjamin Topo Peters, and Ralph Vito Rodriguez. Blinky agreed with the Mafia that T-Bone had to go. Later at the murder trial, the prosecution also established that it was Blinky who approached the other Brotherhood members at Palm Hall and solicited their vote on whether T-Bone should be murdered. The membership agreed and T-Bone was placed in the hat. Prosecution witnesses revealed that T-Bone was seated at a table playing pinochle with several other inmates, including Butch Pappin, Bob Schmidt, and Blinky. Junior Snyder was standing behind the table. At this point, Blinky and Junior then each pulled out knives from lunch bags. Blinky walked behind T-Bone, placing his left hand on his shoulder, and reached around with his right hand and cut T-Bone's throat from ear to ear. Junior proceeded to stab T-Bone approximately 3 times in the back. Both men were tried and convicted. As many gang investigators are fully aware, court appearances create opportunities for multiple criminal activities. This includes escape attempts. Blinky, Jr., Rick Turflinger, Eddie Burnett, Sammy McCart, Michael Masterson, and Bobby Schmidt were being held at the Ontario West End Jail. Jr., Eddie Burnett, and Sammy McCart were on trial for the January 1st, 1980 stabbing assaults of 4 black convicts. Burnett represented himself in the court proceedings. The legal term for this is pro per status. He proceeded to avail himself of a legal weapon used by many in such court matters, the court subpoena. Burnett subpoenaed Blinky, Turflinger, Masterson, and Schmidt. On December 11, 1980 at 12:42 p.m., the desperados sawed through 3/4-inch steel bars, broke out a plastic skylight, and escaped. The sheriffs had anticipated possible escape attempts by shackling their feet and hiring security guards to watch the men. However, the men somehow managed to unshackle themselves, and the scrutiny guards were on their lunch break at the time of the escape. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, keister shanks and handcuff keys are required accessories for career criminals. You got to be ready. Jail deputies became aware of the escape after a passerby saw men on the roof and went inside the jail to report the sighting. McCart was captured by Deputy Harry Howard as he jumped off the roof of the jail. The rest of the escapees ran across the freeway on-ramp facing the jail onto Interstate 15. 3 of the escapees jumped over the freeway guard and emerged on 7th Street in the city of Upland. Blinky and Rick Turflinger were caught a short time later as they jogged past Citrus Elementary School on 7th Street. Junior was captured at 1:10 p.m. He knocked on the door of a 7th Street apartment saying his car had broke down. When the woman opened the door, he forced his way inside where he took some clothes and then made the woman leave with him. Deputies arrested Junior outside the apartment building. Burnett and Schmidt were captured December 13th at a Sacramento motel, and Masterson was arrested January 8th in a motel in Pomona. Sometime in February 1982, as Blinky and Junior fought their murder case, they subpoenaed the top dogs in the Aryan Brotherhood to Chino. They got down to business of reorganizing the group from a prison gang focused on race wars to an organized criminal syndicate. They did away with the one-man, one-vote system and formed a 9-man council. The AB council then voted for and created a 3-man commission. Blinky was voted on to both the council and the commission. The 3 highest-ranking AB members at that time were Blinky, Wendell Blue Norris, and Robert New York Crane. There would be no more freelancing. Murders would need to be approved prior to execution. Okay, sounds good. One of the first murders approved by the new leadership was assigned to brand member Clifford Smith. On July 3, 1982, Stephen Loser Clark from San Diego was stabbed to death on the second tier of the Palm Hall Maximum Security Unit at 7:30 p.m. He was pronounced dead upon arrival at the Chino Community Hospital. 2 prisoners were detained. Big Mike Thompson was accused of holding Loser while Smith stabbed him 37 times. Smith later said that he killed Loser for disrespecting him in front of his daughter by calling Smith a punk during a family visit. "I'd been trying to get Blinky to let me kill him for months," Smith said. Blinky had sponsored Smith into the Aryan Brotherhood in 1978. Smith said he stabbed a man during a World Series game, and that got him a seat at the table. "Not everybody is willing to kill somebody," he said. "Some people are kind of squeamish about that stuff. I wanted to let them know I wasn't." Clifford Smith dropped out in 1984 because he refused an order to murder a man whose daughter sent him pictures and called him uncle. Details of this murder were discovered by San Quentin prison officials when a convict transferred from Chino was discovered attempting to smuggle in a letter known as a kite, secreted in his rectum. The letter was written by Blinky to fellow Commissioner Robert New York Crane, updating him of gang business and explaining the murder of Loser. Blinky wrote, "All that could be done was done, but in the last 2 months he had gone completely insane. Everyone did all they could to tolerate him and help him to get to the streets, but in the end, he turned on everyone." Loser was short to the house, meaning he was due to be paroled in August 1982, 1 month after he was murdered. Blinky planned the next murder approved by the leadership. The victim of this murder was a departure from the brand's previous code of conduct. Brotherhood dropout Stephen Michael Barnes had testified against Blinky and other brand members, had testified in the Hillside Strangler case, and was due to testify against the Mexican Mafia. The brand could not get to him since he was being housed in protective custody, so they made the decision to institute a policy that if they couldn't get to a dropout, then a member of the dropout's family would be killed. Blinky chose Brotherhood member Curtis Price as the assassin and subpoenaed him to Chino. David Price was also known as Baby Kurt and was due to be paroled shortly. He was assigned to murder Mr. Richard Barnes, the father of Steve Barnes. In September 1982, Price was released on parole. On January 23, 1983, he stole the gun collection of Mr. Richard Moore, a homeowner. Price utilized one of the stolen firearms to kill Mr. Barnes. The body of Mr. Barnes was found in his residence on February 13, 1983, having been shot 3 times in the back of the head. On February 19, 1983, the lifeless body of Mrs. Elizabeth Ann Hickey was found in her home. Mr. Price beat Mrs. Hickey to death to cover his tracks. Michael Thompson stated he dropped out of the gang because he did not agree with the idea of killing innocent family members. He assisted the prosecution, and Price was convicted and sentenced to death. When Pelican Bay opened in 1989, Blinky and other members of California's prison gangs were locked down 22 and a half hours in the security housing unit in an 8 by 12-foot cell. But the politics and violence continued. Blinky and fellow Commissioner Wendell Blue Norris became embroiled in a power struggle. Blue was accused of having claimed to have dissolved the commission and running the show all by himself. Whatever the true nature of this dispute, Blue lost and dropped out of the Aryan Brotherhood in 1993. Between February 1996 and February 1998, 8 murders were carried out in the SHU. 7 of the victims were strangled and 1 was beaten to death. 3 of those murders were connected to the Aryan Brotherhood. On February 7, 1996, Brian Deadeye Healy strangled Art Rufo, also known as Ox, after giving him Pruno laced with drugs that rendered Rufo defenseless. Blinky ordered the murder and passed it on to John Youngster Stinson, who assigned the murder to Healy, who was Rufo's cellmate. The motive? Art Rufo won a settlement due to being shot by the gunrail guard on the new Folsom's shoe yard when he attacked a member of the Bloods over a dispute concerning a tier tender assignment. On June the 22nd, 1987, Rufo shared the proceeds with his brothers, but some claimed Blinky wasn't happy with what he received. Others believe that Blinky ordered Rufo's murder because Rufo was an old Blue Norris supporter. After the murder, Healy began questioning whether Rufo really had a killing coming. Blinky wrote Healy a letter and sent it to Healy's attorney, explaining the justification for murdering Rufo. Blinky wrote, "He was a bully and an obnoxious lying twit whose loyalty was with himself. He was one of the most disingenuous men I've ever met, and having been in prison for 27 years, that's saying a lot." Healy was convicted of manslaughter for murdering Rufo and then defected from the brand. At the age of 68, Blinky Griffin died on November 16, 2016, of liver cancer. He also suffered from liver cirrhosis and hepatitis C. All those years of hard partying had caught up with him. Like the Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia, and many other prison gangs, drug-related deaths and internal strife are the number one killer of these guys. I can hear him now saying, "What a way to go." Really? All I can say is, beware, folks. Beware. There is no reward awaiting men in that life. Either you die at the hands of an enemy, or even worse, at the hands of one of your so-called brothers, or you rot in a concrete box waiting for the damage caused by drugs to catch up to you and take you out. Consider this before going down that path. Good night, and God bless you.